Okay, I guess we're live. Quick video this morning. I've got things to do. Almost a little bit choked up this morning for some reason. So if I'm coughing or clearing my throat, my apologies in advance. So what I want to talk about is, well, I guess initially my book. Yes, I wrote a book. Links in the description. But the reason I wrote the book is because I was trying to get out in front of world events. It's a book about world events. It's speculative fiction, so it's science fiction. It's not science fiction. It's speculative fiction. I guess it's science fiction because there's technology in it. But it's almost like anti-science. It's going backwards, losing technology. So what is that? Dystopia? I don't know. I don't think it's dystopia. I think the book is actually pretty uplifting. Why am I talking about my book? Okay, because it's speculative fiction, but the problem with speculation is that it's only fiction until it isn't. Right? It's only fiction until it isn't. If 10 years ago or even 6 years ago, you wrote a speculative fiction novel about a second Donald Trump presidency, well, okay, it was speculation only until he got elected for the second time, right? And then how do you feel about your book, right? You're like, now people can look at now people won't read my book because there is a second Trump presidency. And what are they going to do? Look at the news and look at my book and say, you screwed that part up. Well, that's all wrong. That isn't what happened. And so you're kind of blown out of the water if you're an author doing speculative fiction and you happen to write about a second Trump term sometime in the future. So I wrote a book of speculative fiction. I gave a lot of thought to it. I looked at a lot of resources. I've been speculating, at least on these videos. I've been here 5 years. 5? YouTube just sent me a notice recently. I've been on here 5 years. I think I have 500 videos. I got 2 notices like within a couple of months of each other. And so over the 5 years of on here talking and forcing myself to think about things, think what's happening. And all of it's speculative fiction. I finally got to a point where I felt like I could write a book derived kind of from my videos and looking forward into the future. So my book includes a lot of speculation about geopolitics. And if you follow people like Peter Zion and a bunch of YouTube influencers, they do geopolitics. They speculate about, well, if this happens in Saudi Arabia, then that's going to happen in the future. If this happens in the US or China or wherever, North Korea, then this is going to happen in the future. Geopolitics, global politics. That's where the geo comes in. So my book is kind of geopolitics, at least in what the part of the book that I call Day Zero. It's a book. It's called It Was 100 Days, and the chapters are each day. So there's a day 1, a day 2, and a day 3, and those are literally the chapter titles. But there's also a day 0, and the day 0 isn't a day. Excuse me. Like I said, I'm kind of choked up. Day 0 isn't a day. Day 0 is a period of time. Some things happen the day before, day 1, but some things happened the month before, and maybe even the year before. And it's geopolitics, right? It's the setup. Day 0 is the indeterminate period of time that is the setup to the final crashing of the tsunami on the beach. So I do some geopolitics speculation in Day 0, and it's a fairly lengthy chapter, and it covers a lot of bases, and then it goes right into the book, the Day 1. The premise behind the book is that global heating, which we are currently experiencing, is going to begin to disrupt and unwind parts of the human world, the built human world, which it is currently doing. That's not even speculation. It's going to unwind the political system. I could talk about how that happens, but I'm not going to. Refugee crises, food chain interruptions in water supply, a bunch of things that global heating does. But the ongoing disruptions and all these things start to spread out into other parts of the built human world that you wouldn't think global heating would disrupt. And one of the things that gets disrupted, and it's sort of the first domino to fall that sets off all the other dominoes that are lined up ready to go, and that is a small interruption in the supply of crude oil. Okay, to the present day. What has happened recently? So here's a couple of data points. And then we're going to connect these. I think by the time I get through the data points in real time. This is actually happening out. This is not speculation anymore. Before I even get through these data points, I think you'll probably have them connected. But if you don't, we'll talk about that. Data point 1. Early in the Ukraine war, Ukraine was invaded by Russia, and they started fighting back. Early in the Ukraine war, sometime during year 1, Ukraine started attacking Russian oil and gas pipelines, many of which actually passed through Ukraine. So it would have been easy. They could have just walked up and tossed a grenade at it, blew it up, and walked away, right? They didn't, because those oil and gas pipelines were supplying products to Europe, who Ukraine wanted on their side. This isn't speculation. This is fiction. This is what actually happened. Go back and look it up. So they didn't bomb think about this a second. Ukraine, at war with Russia, invaded by Russia, did not blow up the oil and gas pipelines passing through Ukraine from Russia to Europe. They didn't. You think that'd be day one, right? Disrupt Russia's ability to make money selling oil and gas to Europe. But they didn't, because the Europeans were dependent on those products. Now, it is true that early on, the Nord Stream 1 and 2 natural gas pipelines from Russia to Germany were blown up. And that was a professional job. That involved deep sea divers setting explosives on the pipelines that are in the, what is it, the Baltic Sea? Yeah, the Baltic Sea, blowing them up. Still unknown to this day who did that. Speculation that it was the Ukrainians. Okay, fine. They might have. Again, it makes sense for them to try and hurt the Russians as much as they can by interrupting their ability to make money from their only product they sell. Really, I mean, they also sell timber and some other things. But really, what was it someone said? Russia is a gas station pretending to be a country. They have one game, which is to sell crude oil and natural gas to Europe. They didn't even have a capacity to ship crude oil themselves on ships. Other countries could send their ships to Russia and load up on crude oil, but Russia didn't bother providing those. They just said, if you want our crude oil, send your ships over here and we'll fill them up and you'll pay us. So they didn't even bother with that. Also, Russia has very few ports that are open year round. And so there's a natural limitation. I shouldn't say natural. There is a necessary limitation on how much crude oil they can ship on ships. But there was less of a limitation on what they could do with oil pipelines. I'm trying to get to a point. Early in the war, Ukraine did attack some of the oil infrastructure in Russia. Not in Ukraine, because there's contracts that say Ukraine has to send these products to Europe through pipelines running through Ukraine. Plus, Ukraine gets some of the money for transshipment fees, right? So the stuff is going over their territory. They get paid. They get paid to provide shipment. So there was money involved for them. So, and plus the Biden administration was telling Ukraine, don't interrupt the supply of Russian crude oil and natural gas to Europe, because Europe is your allies. And you don't want them suffering. So just let it go through and we'll deal with the Russians some other way. And Joe Biden went, so when Ukraine started messing up the Russians with their pipelines and oil transportation centers, pumps and filtration sites and things like that. When they started going after those, Joe Biden went to Ukraine and said, hey, we asked you not to do that, number one. Number two, we're supplying you with weapons. So what are you doing? We'll cut off our supply of weapons to you. You won't be able to fight the Russians. And so Ukraine stopped. And that was really... Okay, I understand the geopolitics of that. That Joe Biden was having trouble with the economy. He was an old guy, so he had lots of problems personally. And he didn't want to get a black eye as president over the price of gasoline and crude oil and the availability of those in Europe. He didn't want to deal with it. So he told Ukraine, look, you're going to fight the Russians. We're going to do something with the Russians, but you can't be bombing the pipelines. He did that. So they stopped. And then the Biden administration was done. Kamala Harris did not get elected president. Donald Trump did. And Donald Trump cut off supplies of weapons to Ukraine. So Ukraine is like, okay, so while Joe Biden was willing to play ball with us, we won't blow up the infrastructure. But Donald Trump is being a butthead, so the gloves are off. And the gloves came off. Point number 2. Ukraine started blowing up Russian infrastructure. And about the same time, oil and that gas infrastructure. So about the same time that Trump came in and the gloves came off, Europe started sending serious weapons into Ukraine, in part because the U.S. was unreliable in that regard. And when the Europeans sent those weapons, they didn't have any strings attached. Because the Europeans have another problem. Russia is attacking Europe. They're attacking Europe in Ukraine, but the Europeans don't want Russia to get Ukraine. So, yes, there's problems with the supply of Russian crude oil and natural gas to Europe. Let's hope that doesn't get interrupted. But they gave weapons to Ukraine without restrictions. Also, we were now 2-3 years into the war, and Ukraine started saying, we're going to have our own munitions industry. And they did. It took them a while to spin up, but they finally did it. And now they have their own missiles. They have their own kinds of missiles that they can, long-range missiles that they can go into Russia with. And so all the stars aligned, and Donald Trump was being a butthead. And so forget the U.S. They're not a partner anymore. So what do we want to do? We got these weapons. We've got these targets. What should we do? I wonder. So they started blowing up the Russian oil infrastructure. The pipelines, the pumping stations, the processing stations, where they take the water out and whatever else they have to do. And also the refineries inside of Russia. Well, they went at that hammer and tongs, let me tell you. And so, third point. 20% of Russia's refinery capacity, where you take the crude oil and you make it into usable products like gasoline and diesel and jet fuel. 20% of that is now offline. Experts were predicting early on that if Russia ever lost 20% of its refinery capacity, it would not be able to meet its own internal demands for products. Gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, all the rest. So now, change screen. Now, point 4, I'm building a narrative here, okay? Point 4, we're seeing gas lines in Russia. These are the civilians. Okay, there are no military vehicles in there. The military supposedly is getting its gasoline and diesel and whatever, jet fuel, whatever it has to have to fight the war in Ukraine. Oh, and by the way, now they're gearing up to fight wars in the Baltic states, Finland. They're harassing the UK. And so they're extending their reach wherever they can, which seems kind of weird, but that's what they're doing. I guess they think there's going to be some kind of a payoff. So I don't know what they think is going to happen. But anyway, that's what they're doing. They're expanding their war. And so now they need even more petroleum products than they did before. Meanwhile, the citizenry isn't getting that. With 20% of the refinery capacity offline, and there's always another 20% that's on maintenance, and there's always another 20% that's too old to work, and there's another 20% that's used for providing products simply for the elites, and there's all kinds. Their capacity is carved up in certain ways that they can't simply say, oh well, we'll just move some of the oil from this part of the country to this part of the country. It's hard to do. So with 20% of their refinery capacity offline, they start to have problems, and that was the prediction that they would. So now all of these points are lining up. And what's happening geopolitically is that Russia is running out of gas. Figuratively, in terms of their capacity. And literally, people in Russia can't find gasoline for their cars. Now, as others have been pointing out, Arthur Rehi, who R-E-H-I, who he's a blogger. He does a great job with talking about Russia. He's pointing out, you see all these people here in these car lines. Well, this is summer, right? This is summer. This is fall. They're sitting out, and some of these lines are like 2-3 kilometers long. So that's like a mile or so. And so but this is summer. And so it's not too bad to be out here in a long line, waiting for a day or two, parking your car and walking home and coming back and moving it forward, right? That's what they're doing. It might not be too bad in the summer to sit out here and wait for the, look at these lines. This is no joke, people. This is no joke. This is not propaganda. This is no joke. Wait till winter comes. Wait until winter comes. These people, they won't be in these lines because their cars will run out of gas. They'll have to run their car all the time to keep it from freezing. Russia gets cold, all right? They're going to run their car all the time they're in line to keep it from freezing and to keep from dying in their car. And they won't be able to. They'll just have to go home and park and stay home until summer, when they can try and go out and get gasoline again without freezing to death. So this is a big deal for them. This is kind of the end of their world. This is almost the end of their world. With 20% of the Russian oil refinery capacity taken offline, plus the rest of it being in the shape that it's in, which is probably not very good, these people are staring at what we call an existential crisis. Their existence is at risk. This is going to lead to fatalities. This is going to lead to people stealing gas, killing each other for gas, rioting, destroying the service stations. You know how it is when people chimp out. It's just going to be a disaster. It's all going to happen in the winter, and they're not going to be able to get to work. They're not going to have any money. Russia's running out of money. They're not going to be able to give people money. There's no gasoline. Russia doesn't have money to buy gasoline for people, and it's going to be an absolute clusterfuck and an existential crisis. So this gets me to the part where I have to go back and talk about my book. Russia needs to do something to get the Ukrainians to stop. Well, a couple of things they have to solve now. One, they have to convince the Ukrainians to stop blowing up their oil infrastructure. Now, maybe Russia goes to the Europeans and tell them, you need our oil and you need our natural gas. You need to lean on the Ukrainians the way Joe Biden did. Now, maybe the Europeans will do that. Maybe they won't. Maybe they see this as a way to end the war. So maybe they won't. And that's an important distinction. Joe Biden had leverage. The Europeans may not have leverage, or they may not want to even exercise their leverage. They may be thinking, yeah, you do you, Ukraine. This is working. The Russians are suffering. They're dying in their cars in the snow, trying to get gasoline so they can get to the market to buy food. This is a real dumpster fire, people. This is an absolute dumpster fire. So somehow the Russians have to convince the Europeans, or both of these may be true. They have to repair their existing infrastructure, which they can't do because they never manufactured the parts they needed for their refineries. All their refineries were purchased from European providers. All of it. They didn't make any of it. Well, I mean, they assembled it, right? They had their welders out there welding the pipes together. But they didn't manufacture any of that stuff. Russia is a backward country. When they manufacture cars, their cars are so bad even the people in Russia don't drive them. They're not a manufacturing superpower. Okay, well, China is a manufacturing superpower. And China can sell them some parts. But one, Russia doesn't have any money, and two, China doesn't really like Russia, just so you understand. The idea that Russia might be suffering could be fine with the Chinese. They're just going to swoop in and steal half of Russia. I mean, the country. The Chinese could just steal half of Russia if the Russian regime collapses. They could just walk in. Siberia, all that stuff. And there's natural gas and oil in places like Siberia. The Chinese won't have any trouble getting that resource and sending it to China. No trouble of any kind. All they have to do is wait for Russia to go tits up, and then they just swarm across the border into eastern Russia and take whatever they want. So what are the Chinese going to do for the Russians? Maybe something, maybe nothing. Now we're in speculation about geopolitics, right? So the Russians are in big trouble right now. And the third thing that might happen, if the Europeans don't tell the Ukrainians to knock it off, if the Europeans don't supply Russia with spare parts for their refineries, pipelines, if the Chinese don't supply the Europeans with spare parts, which are not the same as the Europeans. So it's a whole nother secondary infrastructure project. If the Chinese don't do that, then what are the Russians going to do? Well, one speculation is they've got nuclear weapons. Could they threaten the Europeans and tell them, hey, I've got a nuclear weapon pointed at every one of your capitals. You get to Ukraine. You tell them to knock that shit off. Donald Trump isn't going to do it. You get down there, you tell them to knock that off. You stop sending weapons to Ukraine. You stop sending support and money to Ukraine. You tell them to knock that off. And then you fix our oil refineries, because we've got a nuclear weapon pointed at every one of your capital cities. Would they do that? Will the Russians do that? I don't know. They might. They might. Can't rule it out. Ah, Cougar, you're full of shit. No, I'm not. No. This is an existential crisis for the Russians. These fuckers are going to die. Come wintertime, these motherfuckers are going to die. They're going to die in their homes. They're going to starve. They're going to die in their cars trying to get gasoline. They're just going to die. That's called an existential crisis. They may not exist by the end of winter. Oh, you can't say that. Oh, yes, I can. They are 100% dependent on their own supply of fossil fuels for 100% of what they do all the fucking time. So would they target the European countries with nuclear weapons to get them on side? They might. But there's something else they can do. Russia could go to Iran. And Russia could tell it, who's an ally, they could tell Iran, okay, look, you're trying to get a nuclear weapon. For all anybody knows, you've got one already, right? You might have a nuclear weapon. Woohoo. Well, we just don't know, right? We don't know for sure what you've got. But you could. And maybe you don't, but maybe you do. Big speculation. So Russia gives Iran 1, 2, 3, 4 nuclear weapons. Not missiles, just the simple weapon, right? Something that would fit in a crate that you could put in a cargo plane and fly it into Ukraine, Iran. Fly it into Iran, unload it onto a forklift, and then now they've got a nuclear weapon. There's speculation whether Iran has nuclear weapons or not. All of a sudden they have a nuclear weapon. And what would Russia want Iran to do with this free, we're just giving it away to our ally, free nuclear weapon? Well, right across the water from Iran is Saudi Arabia. Iran has already bombed conventionally in the past. Saudi Arabia's main oil terminal. Where is it? Karg Island? Is it Karg Island? The Karg Island facility. They bombed it recently. In fact, the last few years they did that. My guess is the U.S. said, "Hey, knock that shit off. What the fuck are you doing? Don't interfere with the oil supply." Okay, you can bomb Israel and you can get Hamas and you can get the Houthis and everything else, but don't be bombing the Arab oil supply to the rest of the world. You fuck ups. We're going to come in there. We're going to mess you up. Okay, so they did that once and they stopped doing that. Iran hates Saudi Arabia. Iran hates the West. They are allied with Russia. So what if Russia just sleazes in 2 or 3 nuclear weapons, not even missiles, right? We're not talking about infrastructure here. We're just talking about the weapon. They sleeve one of those into Iran, and Iran puts it on a little funky little cargo ship, or even a fishing boat, and they sail it out, and they cast their nets, and they do their fishing, and then on accident, they just go towards Saudi Arabia, and they get to Karg Island, and they set it off. What if Iran nukes the Saudi oil terminal with a Russian weapon? Russia could actually threaten that. There's no way we could prevent that. Russia could say, okay, you know what? We're not going to point nuclear weapons at your capital cities. That would be wrong. So we're not going to do that. However, we have an ally, Iran, who has a beef with the West, including Saudi Arabia. Mortal enemies. It's religious, I think. Or the religious regime in Iran doesn't like the monarchy in Saudi Arabia, or some combination of things. So they've been at war for ages. And so Russia could threaten the West. They could say, look, we're going to take out Saudi Arabia as an oil supplier because you have taken us out. We've got long lines. We've now got long lines. Our Russian people are going to be dying in the winter. They're going to revolt. They're going to overthrow the regime. They're going to end the war in Ukraine. They're going to kick Putin out of power. They're going to hang him from a lamppost, like the Italians hung Mussolini. All right, we're worried that they're going to take us out, and we don't want that. So if you don't call off the Ukrainians and help us fix our damaged oil infrastructure and stop all the embargoes of parts and supplies and everything else we need, and do a bunch of other things we want, and give us Ukraine, we're going to arm Iran with nuclear weapons. And that might not ever make it into the news. That would be high level, very secret meetings in secret places, talks between Russia and two or three European nations. 2 or 3. Germany, France, maybe the UK, right? 2 or 3 European nations. And the UK and France both have nuclear weapons. So they would need to be definitely on board with this, because Russia is going to arm Iran with a nuclear weapon unless you get Ukraine off of our back. Would they do that? Fuck yeah. Would they aim nuclear weapons at all the European capitals? Maybe. But I don't think that actually gets them what they want. Would they arm Iran with a nuclear weapon to take out the Saudis? Oh, fuck yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy, would they ever. And no doubt, that's why the U.S. was in Iran dropping bunker busters on their nuclear program. But Iran's nuclear program is in Russia. Russia has, they still have 8,000 nuclear weapons, 4,000 of which are in deployment, or could be within a matter of days or weeks. They've got 4,000 nuclear weapons pointed everywhere. You think they couldn't peel off 2 or 3 of those for Iran and just say, oh, Iran, look, they've had nuclear weapons all this time. Who knew? Who knew? They had a nuclear program. Trump bombed it. Trump and the Israelis bombed it. But look, you were too late. Iran has a nuclear weapon. They've had a nuclear weapon for years. They've been sitting on that, wondering what they're going to do. We got this nuclear bomb. What should we do with this nuclear bomb we made? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. Well, let's bomb the Saudis. So the Russians could go to the European leaders and say, hey, surprise, surprise, Iran has a nuclear weapon. And the Europeans will say, well, that's because you gave them one. We don't know. Maybe. We didn't have to. They had their own nuclear program. But guess what? Iran has a nuclear weapon. And Iran is looking for something to blow up with their nuclear weapon. Now, this is all speculation, right? But it's not out there. This isn't a Tom Clancy fantasy. Okay? And this isn't aliens from Mars, right? This is not fantasy. This is geopolitics. So, Russia now has long lines. They're essentially fucked. Winter is coming. The Russian people are going to die. They're not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy with the Russian regime. Not even close. And they have a lot of incentive to pull a rabbit out of the hat. They have a lot of incentive. And the point in my book, so now we're getting close to my book. The point in my book where shit starts to unwind, and we get day one of the collapse, is when Iran blows up the Karg oil terminal with a nuclear weapon. That's it. That's how I do it. Iran has a nuclear program. Iran is an ally of Russia. And right now, Russia is up shit's creek. They may not survive the winter. And in my book, Iran blows up Karg Island with a nuclear weapon. And then somebody, the US, the Europeans, the Israelis, retaliate by blowing up maybe Karg Island. I may have this backwards. Karg Island may be the Iranian oil terminal. I should have looked this up. It doesn't matter, right? You know what I'm talking about. It's all on the coast. And they're like, 100 miles apart, or maybe even less, 50 miles apart. So the Iranians nuke, in my book, but also possibly in real life, the Iranians nuke the the terminal, the oil terminals. This is where the ships come in, fill up with oil and leave. The oil terminal in Saudi Arabia. In retaliation, somebody, maybe the Saudis, do the Saudis have a nuclear weapon? I don't know. They blow up the Iranian oil terminal, which is like 50 miles away. And then, with Iran and Saudi Arabia both effectively offline, the human world ends. It just ends. That's it. Well, of course, the one that's already offline is Russia. So by the time there's an exchange between Iran and Saudi Arabia trying to, help the Russians, in the case of Iran, helping the Russians, by the time that happens, Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia are all offline at the end of the day. And it might even be a day. It could be day one. At the end of day one of the collapse, all three of those countries, major oil exporters, are offline indefinitely. It takes months to years to repair these kind of facilities. And if the Iranians actually use a nuke on Saudi Arabia, it may be over. They're done. There's so much damage that it's basically a decades-long project to get them back online. And while they're offline, of course, what's happening to their economy? What's happening to their people? Do they have revolts? Is the Saudi royal family murdered because they're not paying their peasants enough money? They get a percentage, right? A percentage goes to the people, none of whom work. They all live luxury lifestyles. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think the people in Saudi Arabia under the monarchy probably have pretty shitty lives. But, they get money from the oil industry. They get money from the oil industry. I don't think they do very much to survive. There's not much you can do there anyway. And everything else is taken care of by the state oil company, because it is run by the state of Saudi Arabia, and all the income therefore goes to the state. There's no companies, there's no corporations. There is a corporation, but it's just a shell company for the Saudi royal family. So the oil exports go offline. The money dries up like instantly. They have some money that they keep in a sovereign wealth fund, but the prince, MTB was his name, I can't remember his name. The prince, right? The crown prince of Saudi Arabia. He's been spending money lavishly on projects. And so, whatever. They may be broke. Who knows? They may be broke. So, what happens to Saudi Arabia when the oil terminals are blown up and they can't make money? Well, maybe they're all driven out. Maybe they have to go to Qatar, or they end up going to France or the UK, right? So they're not there anymore. So the country collapses. And maybe the Iranians come in. Maybe it's a big clusterfuck and a big dumpster fire. And anyways, the Saudi oil field, the whole entire oil business, may go offline essentially forever. But it doesn't even have to be forever. It's interrupted. And once it's interrupted, then we are off the map, boys and girls. We're off the map. And again, the way this happens, now it's not quite this way in the book. The lead up, the day zero stuff isn't exactly like this in the book, but the end result is exactly the same. Russia right now is in deep doo-doo. Russia is in big trouble. I mean existential trouble. This could be the end of Russia. Well, you can't know that. That's just hyperbole. You're just speculating. Well, let's just wait and see, shall we? And what the critical thing here is, what do the Russians think? What you and I think is of no consequence. What do the Russians think? And if they get desperate enough and they want to retaliate, they may go to the Europeans and say, hey, tell the Ukrainians to knock that shit off, like Biden did. And the Europeans may say, pound sand. And so the Russians may say, fine, watch what happens now. So they arm Iran with a nuclear weapon, and they have a nuclear program, so why not? And then the Iranians bomb the Saudi Arabians. And then the Israelis and the U.S. and whoever else bombs the Iranians. And all of a sudden, 3 countries, this is a recap, 3 countries, Russia originally, but now Saudi Arabia and in retaliation Iran are all offline. And that's it. Bang, flatline. Bang, it's done. Oh, but the U.S. is a major producer. Okay, so what do you think Trump is going to do? You think that Trump is going to send even more of our oil resources at some discount or other to Europe to keep their gears turning over? I don't think so. I don't think he is. I don't think he will. I think he'll want something in return. You got to buy my Bitcoin. You got to buy me another jet. You got to, send me gold and send me whatever, gold toilets. I need some incentive here, guys. Show me the money. Show me the money. Yeah, that's what he's going to do. And will the Europeans be able to accommodate Donald Trump to get the stuff that they can't get from Saudi Arabia anymore, or Iran, or Russia? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But what if it all just falls apart? What if it all just goes to shit? Read my book. Start on day 1 if you want to. Start there. Because if all of this goes sideways, and it is going sideways now, people, it is going sideways. Russia is fucked. Well, you can't know that. Oh, yes, I can. And the Russians believe it too. The Russians are saying, we're kind of fucked. And people who are looking at the Russians and know how Russia operates, they're saying, wow, Ukraine, they kind of fucked them up. The Russians are really in serious trouble now. Look what Ukraine did. Why did they do that earlier? Well, because Joe Biden told them not to. Oh, so Trump didn't tell them not to? No, because Trump is America first. He doesn't give a fuck. Trump has no visibility into global events. None, zero. Neither does any of his ass clowns that he surrounded himself with. These are stupid morons. They don't know geopolitics. They don't know fuck. So he's home dealing with the woke in Portland, sending ICE out to round up the farm workers, and he's all of this internal woke culture warfare. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is about to go tits up. And then we get day 1. And let me just tell you something, people. You think you got a handle on what happens when Russia goes offline, then the Saudis go offline, and then Iran goes offline? You think you got a handle on that? You do not have a handle on that. You trust me, because I know what people talk about when they talk about all this. They talk about gas lines and the price of gas going up. You think the price of gas is going up? You think the price of gas is going up. And then you'll have to be in line, and there'll be rationing coupons like there was during the Arab oil embargo and all this kind of shit going on. It's going to be inconvenient. You're going to wave the American flag and give me my American oil, and I want it for 25 cents a gallon like it was when my grandpa was buying oil, okay? 25 cents a gallon and wave the American flag. You think that's going to be your life? When Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Iran go offline, that's going to be your life? Gas lines and rationing? That's not going to be your life. There won't be any. There won't be any. The supply chains absolutely, completely collapse. We are. They are. Everyone is 100% dependent all the time on 100% unlimited, uninterrupted access to cheap, inexpensive, readily available crude oil and derivatives, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. 100% of the time. 24/7 for 100% of everything you do. And this system, which has been building up, towering, this tottering, fragile system, could come crashing down. I don't mean slowly becoming more expensive, slowly becoming problematic. It could come crashing down on day one. So what is the rest of my book about? The other 99 days are people coping. Or, to put it bluntly, people dying. I've looked at all the discussions about how this is going to work and how inconvenient it's going to be for Americans to pay an extra 10 cents a gallon for gasoline. That is not your problem. And that's not your problem in Europe. And that's not your problem in the UK. And that's not your problem in Australia. That is not going to be your problem. Your problem is nothing. You're not going to have anything. How's that happen? Oh, well, the government start hoarding. They start hoarding for their military. They start hoarding for the elites. The supply chains start to break down pretty soon. The truck drivers there's a last mile here, people, okay? A big tanker pulls into an oil processing terminal, starts to unload the crude oil. They start processing crude oil at the refinery, most of which are, coastal. And then there has to be a tanker truck driver who comes and fills up with gasoline and then takes out and distributes it to the service stations. That's the last mile. What if that guy isn't doing that? What if the interruptions have happened so bad and so fast that the supply chains simply break? And not only is the guy that delivers the gasoline not doing that because he's home clutching his AR-15 waiting for the end of the world, right? He's not doing that. Neither is the driver who delivers the food to the shelves at the supermarket. And neither is the driver who delivers the medications to the hospital. And neither is any of the drivers who drive any of the personal cars to go to any of the jobs that support these things. This could all be like 3 days in. It's done. It's finished. We broke the supply chains. And the built human world, which was built up slowly over decades, if not centuries, all these agreements, all these contracts, all of this infrastructure, all this towering, creaking edifice of agreements. I'll deliver this and you deliver that, and then we'll have some money and there'll be a payment, and then there'll be a truck that shows up and the driver will drive here, and then they'll sell it for this price and this, all that stuff. A century of building the built human world could come crashing down in a matter of days. And in my telling of the tale, see links in the description. In my telling of the tale, it takes a matter of days. And it's not, things get expensive. It's like what's happening in Russia. These people can't get gas. They can't get it. There is no price. It's just not there. And it was only 20% of their capacity that went offline. And suddenly, they can't get it. Now, I know there's gas going to the military, and there's gas for the aviation industry, kerosene. And, and of course, the elites are getting theirs. And there's a bunch of things that are still happening. But the people, the 99%, are standing in line. Their cars are in line to get petroleum products, diesel and gasoline, so they can live, so they can survive. And while it's summer, being in line is not a big deal. When winter comes, it's going to be a mass fatality event. People will literally starve in their homes over the course of the winter because they can't get out, because their car won't drive, because they can't get gasoline for their car. They abandoned their car. It's sitting on the roadside. It used to be in line to get to a service station, but the service station ran out of gas and the gas never came. And then the car ran out of gas sitting in line, and that was it. They just abandoned the car and walked home. But maybe it was 5 miles away and they walked home, and that's it. They know where the car is. It's sitting in the road, blocking the road along with all the other 400 cars that also ran out of gas within a half a day of each other. And now they're all abandoned vehicles, and they're blocking the road. And that's it. It's done. They're done. They're done. They're home. And do they have food? And nobody's going to work. These people who are sitting in line to get gasoline are going to work. And where do they work? I'm talking about Russia here. Where do these people work? Well, they work at for the oil companies. They're not going back to they're not going back to work. They can't. They have no way to get there. So they're not going to work at the oil company. They're not going to work at the gas company. They're not going to work at the hospital. They're not going to work at the place that makes the food that goes on the shelves. They're not going to the bakery, right? They're not going to the mill. They can't get there. They're home. Their car is 5 miles away, sitting on the edge of the road when they couldn't get gas. And now they're home and they can't go to work. So everything falls apart. It just unravels. And it doesn't take long. It just, over a course of a few weeks, it's just 100 years of constructing all this, of all these agreements and all these people going all these places to do all these things. It just unwinds in a matter of days or weeks. It could all unwind in a week. It's not like you think. It's not even dramatic. It doesn't even make good Hollywood. Because in Hollywood, of course, what do they want? They want Mad Max. They want guns and smoke and fires and vehicles that are all welded together and baling wire, rushing around, slitting each other's throat for the last gallon of gasoline. Mad Max, right? Riding zombies, guns blazing. Where's my gasoline? That's what Hollywood shows you. Because that's drama. That's all you've ever seen is Hollywood versions of this. Hollywood doesn't show you hapless Russians sitting in lines in the winter, which is like, 2 weeks from now, from the recording of this video. They're not showing you hapless lines of Russians waiting in line and running out of gas and going home, and then they just abandon their work. And now they have no money. They also don't have a car because it's 5 miles away covered in snow. And the gas is never coming to that service station because the service station is buried in snow. And no one's going to clear the snow. And they have to wait for it to fucking melt in the spring before they can even get a truck in there to fill up the underground tanks. And where is that guy? He abandoned his car in line. And when he went home and he didn't go to work and he didn't have money, and there was nothing on the shelves, and the baker didn't go to work, and the candlestick maker didn't go to work, and no one went to work. And you go to the store, you finally get there, there's nothing on the shelves. And what do these people do? They die. They die. And it starts with lines to service stations and cars abandoned along the edge of the road. There's no Mad Max. There's no blazing guns. There's nothing. There's no drama of any kind. It's not dramatic. It won't be in the evening news. It's not going to be a Hollywood thriller. It's not going to be zombies. It's not going to be Mad Max. It's not going to be guns blazing. It's not going to be anything interesting. It's going to be this. And it's going to go from this to this with 20 feet of snow. And that's the end of Russia. They're done. And you think they don't know that? They know that. If I know that, they know that. If I know that, they know that. Now, do they care? It may not matter if they care. They may not be able to do anything about it. Oh, except. Let's see, except there is this one thing, right? We're Russia and we're facing an existential crisis. By spring of 2026, Russia may be completely white. Broken up into separate republics, each of them trying to survive. The ones that have access to gasoline can continue, and the ones that don't have access to gasoline basically depopulate, and they're done. They're done forever. And maybe the Chinese move in, right? Maybe the Chinese invade those parts of Russia, take them over, fill it full of Chinese people. But maybe not, right? Who wants to live here? Everybody here died in the winter of 2026. They all died because they couldn't get fuel. Why would we send our people there to live? It's finished. That part of the map is done. Okay, so come spring, there may not be a Russia. And they know that. Let's say come spring, we're going to be dead. Our people will be, half our population could be dead. Cougar, you can't say that. That's just hyperbole. The fuck I can't. Half their population could be dead. Half. We're talking mass fatality events in the event of my book happening. In fact, the target, I keep coming back to the same number, because it's easy to remember. And 999 people out of 1,000 perish. That's how dependent we are on fossil fuels. And if the Russians are thinking the same thing, well, we're kind of screwed. Where's Joe Biden when you need him? He was riding herd on the goddamn Ukrainians, and Donald Trump has his head so far up his ass that he doesn't even care what they do. So he's going to let them do what they do. He's going to even give them weapons. Tomahawk cruise missiles are headed now for Ukraine. What the actual fuck? Okay, so now the gloves are really off, right? So you're sending Tomahawk cruise missiles. You're going to declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Is that what you're going to do? And you're just going to let us, sit under piles of snow and die in the middle of winter, starve to death in our homes? That's what you're going to do for us? And you're going to arm Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles, and they've already taken out 20% of our oil infrastructure, and now we have gas lines, and we're going to have gas lines in the winter. Oh, actually, not even gas lines. We're just going to have corpses, probably a 50% die-off. And, what can we do about that? We're Russia. I'm Vladimir Putin. I've got my military guys sitting around here. I've even got some Iranians at the table. What can we do about this? Let's see. What could we break? Could we break something? How are we going to break this? Oh, I know. Let's threaten the world with taking Saudi Arabia offline. You're going to take Russia offline? Okay, that's fine. That's how we're going to play this? Well, then let's just play this. You want some geopolitics? Let's have some geopolitics then. Let's all sit down at the table. We'll talk geopolitics. You're going to take Russia offline. You're going to let half our people die in the middle of winter. And that's how you're going to do this? That's how you're going to play this? Joe Biden wasn't going to play that game. Joe Biden was afraid of something bad happening if you played that game. You're going to play that game? You're going to send Tomahawk cruise missiles to the Ukrainians? And we're going to play that game? Okay. Let's all sit down and play that game then. Let's all sit down at the table and let's play this game. And the first thing we're going to do is not send a nuclear weapon to Iran. We're not going to do that. I mean, someone could. I don't know. Things happen. It's just, they have a nuclear program. We don't even need to send them something. Oops, Iran has a nuclear weapon. How did that happen? My shocked face, right? This is my shocked face. This is my surprised face. Iran has a nuclear weapon? Oh no, now what? Oh no, they used it on the Saudi oil terminal? Oh, who would have thought? Here we are. We were trying to talk our way through this and trying to make peace and trying to be rational adults. And what happens? Iran, up jumps the devil. They blow up the Saudi oil terminal with a fucking nuclear weapon. It's going to take 10 years to fix that shit. Oh, and by the way, now the monarchy has collapsed and the people are rioting in the streets of the, cities and probably the oil fields too in Saudi Arabia. Oh, and now there's been retaliation against Iran. Who did that? Was that the Israelis? I don't know. Who blew up the Iranian oil terminals? Wow. Let's just play this game, shall we? You're going to let Russia freeze to death in the middle of winter? Lines of cars freezing? People in their homes can't even get to food? Freezing to death? You're going to play that game? Let's play another game. Let's play another game. And Cougar called it day one. Let's just call it day one. This is the day one game, people. And here's the day one game. Iran ends up with a nuclear weapon. The Saudis end up being offline. Iran ends up being offline. Now your three major producers are offline and your supply chains are blown to rat shit. That's the game. We're playing that game right now, people. Right now, in real time, it is October 3rd, Friday in the year 2025. That's the game. That's the game. I call it day zero in my book. It's the run-up to the collapse of the human world. This is the problem with speculative fiction. It's only fiction until it isn't. And keep telling yourself that. It's only speculation until it isn't. Until it happens. And then it's not speculation anymore. It's not fiction anymore. It's fact. It's daily life. It's our reality. And then you're in day one of my book. And over 100 days, there's a small group of people who come to deal with what all that means. And yeah, there's zombies in it. Yeah, the book has zombies. Real zombies. There are zombies in our future, people. Cannibal zombies in our future. Oh, yeah. Because people aren't going to figure this out. They're not going to. They're not going to know what to do. And no one's going to tell them what to do. And there's going to be a bunch of people become cannibal zombies. Cannibal zombies. Could be you. Could be me. Don't know. It's not going to be me, I don't think. Unless I get real unlucky. I've got, what? Half a ton? I've got a half a ton of food present on site. I've got my own electricity. I have all electric cooking, refrigeration, storage. Got everything I need right here and a half a ton of food. Not MREs, real meals ready to eat. I've got rice and beans and pasta, and I have everything I need to not die and to make sure that the people that are important to me don't die. I have habitat. I've even got underground habitat. Imagine that. Doesn't this cat have a long tail? Yeah, I've got underground habitat. Well, there you go. So I don't plan on being a cannibal zombie, but there's going to be somebody out there that's a cannibal zombie. Running around looking for someone fresh to eat. Read the book. The link's in the description. It starts right here. Long lines in Russia trying to get gas, failing to do so. And winter is coming. It starts right here. Right here. This is day zero. This is all day zero. And then the Iranians get a nuclear weapon. And Russia and the Iranians try to get to the Europeans, make them stop the war in Russia's favor. And it doesn't work. And all of a sudden the Iranians do something. And all of a sudden somebody does something in retaliation. And then it's day one. It's not day zero anymore. This is all day zero. It's all day zero. Yes, I wrote a book of speculative fiction. It's not fiction anymore. All we need is a couple more shoes to drop, right? And then my fiction is fact. How do I feel about that? Not too good. I don't feel very good about that. But my job as a writer, and my job as a science communicator, and my job as a geopolitician, not that I am, by the way, but that's kind of what I'm doing here today. My job is to think about these things, run it through a filter that isn't generated by Hollywood, because those people don't know what they're talking about. They just want to sell movies. I'm running it through a different filter. I'm running it through the filter of the built human world and how fragile it is. That's my filter. And this is it. Long lines, not getting gasoline. Long lines, people not surviving in Russia. And the Russian government knowing that. Long lines. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work for them. It doesn't work. That's a service station. That's cars trying to get gasoline. What happens when the snow comes? The first snow comes. These cars are all sitting in line. They can't even get out of here. They're sitting here waiting for gasoline. They're waiting for the truck to come and give them gasoline. And then the snow comes. And then there's 3 feet of snow. And that's it. They're done. They're walking home. And they may not even get home on their day one. When their day one comes and it just snows and all this is under snow, they may not even get home. And they certainly won't get to work the next day. And then they don't have any money. And then what do? How are they going to buy food? And they go to the shelves, they go to the market, look at the shelves. There's nothing on the shelves. Why? Because there's no trucks delivering anything to the stores. That's it. They're done. These people are done. These motherfuckers are done. They're done. What can I say? They're done. They're finished. These people are fucking finished. They're finished. Look at this shit. They're done. These people are done. What are they going to do? They're going to die. These people are going to die. And as soon as the Russian government figures that out, they're not the sharpest tools in the shed, right? They're a bunch of Slavs. They just go from one disaster to the other. But as soon as they see this existential threat coming down the road, then they're going to say, okay, time to do something. What are their options? They got one. They got one option, and that's nuclear threats to Europe. They got one fucking option. Nuclear threats. Will they do it? Yes, they will. They will do it, and they'll start the ball rolling. And where it goes from there, buy my book. You'll have a clue. Because I thought this through. And I don't care what Hollywood thinks is going to happen. Mad Max, bullets all flying in the air and fighting and cutting each other's throats for the last gallon of gasoline. This is what you get. Boring, non-dramatic, people dying in the snow, people dying at home, starving to death. And come spring, the Russian Federation is finished. They know that as well as I do. You think they're not going to do something about that? And that's just day zero. This is just day zero. This is not day one of my book. Day one of my book, shit comes unglued. What am I supposed to say? It's only fiction until it isn't. That's what I can say. And as I usually say at the end of these videos, best advice I have for you people is don't die. What can I say? Don't die. And that's your responsibility. I'm here to tell you that your next challenge is not dying. That's it. Don't be among the 999 out of 1,000 that can't figure that shit out. That's your responsibility to figure that out. I can't figure that out for you, but I can tell you, and I'm telling you right now from right here where I am, don't die. That's it. That's your responsibility. And my responsibility is over. Having told you that, well, I can tell you, read my book. Yeah, it's a user's manual. It's a user's manual for how not to die in the coming existential crisis. Which starts in Russia. And it starts in Russia with that shit. They ran out of gas. Huh. Who would have thunk it? Well, lots of people thought it. Hollywood didn't. Because that, they don't want you to think about that. Oh, God. So we don't want to show people an actual disaster. They'll panic and they'll demand change. And we don't want change. We want money. Go to the theater, buy our movies, buy our entertainment. We got zombies and we got Mad Max and we got drama. They don't want they don't want this shit. Hollywood doesn't want this. Well, that's what you're going to get. That's coming your way, and my admonition to you is don't die. I mean, not that you have a lot of choice in the matter, right? Like and subscribe. I come back here and lay out the existential dread every so often. Right now I have to go do some shopping so I can finish my roof. And then we'll see what happens.